Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Youth Majlis for our discussion today. For those of you who don't know, the idea of the Majlis is a term in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere in the Arab world for a welcome, for a hospitality, for a space in your house and people can feel an extension of kindness. And I think that's the spirit in which we have this session today. I'm very happy to be with Misk Foundation and my panelists here. I'm Anthony Bennett. I'm Chief Executive of Reboot the Future. And here we have, from left to right, we have Tamalun Ekbat, who is the Vice Curator at Global Shapers and also Program Lead at GERHub. Then we have David Henry, who's the CEO of what I've been calling Misk City, but it's actually Mohammed bin Salman City. We'll get that right. The world's first not-for-profit city, and David's going to tell us more about that. Then we have Mauricio Rodas, who's former mayor of Quito and visiting professor at the University of Pennsylvania in Ecuador. And then we have Jan Versbacher, who's co-CEO and founder of Climeworks. And today we're going to be talking about two subjects which are very important to the Youth Majlis. One is 60% of the world's youth is in the Global South. So that means when we're talking about solutions, whether it's climate solutions or within the SDGs, the appetite of youth in the Global South will be a huge part of this. But also the increasing acceleration of people into cities and urbanization will be a key factor of the 21st century and how we choose to live and how we choose to make these climate solutions too, and these societal solutions. So the intersection between youth and youth and urbanization is, I think, the very specific area that we want to address today. And all four of our speakers here are doing incredibly interesting and progressive things in this space with huge ambition. So I'm super keen to hear about the intersection between their different fields. And brilliantly, each of our speakers is representing a different continental mass. So we can have a fair claim to say it's a genuinely globalized conversation here at Davos. So because my questions are written here in a different order to my speakers, I'm going to go to David first. Can you start with just telling us a little bit about Misk City and the work you're doing there? And specifically, I think this question of youth, how does this occur within Misk City? How are you tapping into youth communities to drive large-scale development initiatives within this project?
Sure. So thanks for everyone being here today. So Misk City, we're 100% subsidiary of the Misk Foundation, who's responsible for this. So it's Crown Prince's private foundation, and he had a vision, I think, when he started the foundation back in 2011 to develop a real estate-led ecosystem for the youth of Saudi. So that's what I've been given the challenge of building since early 2019, when we had a master plan approved through an industrial design competition. And it's all about the youth. That when you look downstairs, the whole foundation was established to promote the expansion of the Saudi youth, become global citizens, and take up responsibility as the next custodians of the country. So I have 220 staff. 90% are youth of Saudi, from urban planners to marketers to landscape architects. So what I've done from the beginning is immerse that team into the planning. We send interns to our planners in Europe so that they can deliver firsthand to the more advanced people in planning outcomes. So we do a lot of internships of the Saudi youth in the areas of smart city. We send them to Dubai, we send them to Spain. So there's a voice for them in the planning process. It's a smart city. We're looking at this new terminology of a cognitive city. We're a 15-minute city, and they will be the ultimate people working there. And if His Royal Highness's vision is fully completed, they'll live there. So they are essentially the custodians of the city. The foundation, through His Royal Highness, will keep the city in perpetuity. It will become an endowment for him when he's likely to become His Majesty. So it's all about the youth, and as I said, from every opportunity I have, they input into the business. And that's how we allow them to bring out their social change and the challenges we have for affordable housing, passion about working in a city that's massively expanding, and particularly since he took over as the Crown Prince, the complete change in the nation, which most people read about globally.
And very specific follow-up, just quickly, where is Misk City within Saudi?
Misk City is, so it's in Riyadh. For those who haven't travelled to Riyadh, it's essentially 10 minutes from downtown. It adjoins what's called Wadi Hanifa, which is the main green artery of the city. 10 minutes from the diplomatic quarter, which is the embassy capital of the city, and adjoining a project called Diriyah, which is the birthplace of the Saudi nation. So it's a very unique piece of real estate.
Thank you. So, Tamila, really, I'd like to hear you tell a little bit about your work and to the audience, but again, within this framing of what's the specific mobilization of youth within the work you do in terms of the sustainable impact in urban framing?
Yep. Thank you so much. I'm Timulung. I'm from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Coming from a very small country with vast land, we actually live in a capital. Most of the citizens live in a capital city, so we have around 3 million people, but almost half of them live in one capital city, which is a very centralized country. And then at the same time, it's a very vibrant city with almost 30% of the citizens are young people, so I feel very energized just working and interacting with them in Ulaanbaatar city and on a global scale as well. So my work really is consists of working on the grassroots level, especially in urban development sector. So we really see from a perspective what my work at my full-time job, Gear Hub, it's a local NGO to bring, with the idea to bring uncommon solutions to common problems in urban space. And I'm here as a delegate of Global Shapers community, and I work as a vice curator at Ulaanbaatar Hub, which we have amazing active 27 active members and a community of 70 young people. So really the work in the urbanization sector, I see from the perspective that how we can turn these ideas into action on a really grassroots level. I would like to mention some of the projects that we do at Ulaanbaatar City and how we see those as representation of young people. So we have projects from mental health to public space, which really is one of the challenges that we are facing in Ulaanbaatar City. Due to rapid urbanization in the city, we have been facing this crisis of land management, and then we basically have no access to green space, especially in the outskirts of the city. We call it a Gir district, informal settlement. So it's really, the project itself is turning the neglected spaces in urban space into green pocket parks to increase the accessibility of the space. And it's just one example. And then how, as young people, we are trying to make an impact in society is just coming together instead of working alone, instead of trying to find solutions alone. We really come together as a whole and trust each other. And we are here today at Davos under the theme of rebuilding trust. And I think it's very essential, especially young people trusting each other, and also policymakers and influential people trusting young people that they can drive change. And then how it is being translated in urban spaces, it depends on the context, but I can really speak from my perspective that young people needs to be empowered and needs to have an access to education to actually know that they can make an impact. I was fortunate enough to engage in different volunteering experience so that I have an understanding that I can make a change in this society. But it's really about how we can make those empowerment and information accessible to all young people around the world, which we can. I think we are, making a good progress here at MISC Foundation as well.
Thank you. So we're going to take the conversation to South America now, and I want to ask Maurizio. I mean, there's a really interesting example of how youth-led initiatives cope with rapid urbanization in a very short space of time. In your experience of being a mayor, what role do educational institutions and government and community groups play in fostering an ecosystem that accelerates youth-led impact? So what role did when you came in as your mayoralty, what role did the youth community groups play within that?
Well, thank you so much. So first of all, I would like to say that in any process of fostering livable cities, the role of the youth is absolutely fundamental. And once you have that clear, then there's a number of things you can do to foster that. And I think that in order to promote youth participation to develop socially impactful initiatives, you need to empower, to engage, and to foster collaboration between the public and the private sector. That's absolutely fundamental. And when it comes to education, I think that partnering with schools, with colleges, with universities, to make sure that social impact is part of their curriculum, educational curriculum, is also key. Because then you can embed this very important concept in people from the early childhood, right? For them to develop a feeling of civic engagement with society. Now, let me tell you a bit about the kind of things we did when I was mayor to engage the youth. So, through our economic development agency, we actually created a whole work stream to engage the youth in a number of initiatives in the city. So we partnered with international organizations, with the private sector, with civil society to develop mentoring programs, to foster the creation of startups. We developed training programs in order to foster entrepreneurships in the city led by the youth, and particularly those entrepreneurships with a high social component, so social entrepreneurships. I think that if you really want to empower the youth, you have to listen to them. And in order for that to happen, we, invited, for example, big private companies and non-profits to come to us and to create a collective space in which they can share real-life problems. And young people were asked to find solutions to those problems. And the best solutions were recognized. And actually, those young people were many times hired by these companies to actually implement the solutions that they came up with. When I mean listening to the youth, I also mean allowing them to co-create solutions, in this case with city officials, with the municipality. So we developed an online platform for the youth to propose ideas on how to solve daily problems in the city. So if they find potholes in the cities, if they found that it was necessary to build a green space in certain neighborhood, or if they thought that probably developing a social program to support the elderly was worth, then they could apply for accessing funds from the participatory city budget to actually implement those kinds of initiatives. And then I also think that recognizing this work is absolutely fundamental. So we created all sorts of awards and public recognition to the youth for what they were doing, because that's the best way to incentivize and to inspire other young people to do the same, to engage with their city, to be part of the co-creation of a better city for all.
So the theme of this year's WEF is indeed building trust, and what you're actually saying is, in the first instance, you extend that trust. You give people trust with budgets. You give them mentoring. You actually say they are the more than collaborators. They're solution providers as well.
Being part of the solution, and co-creating ideas. I think that's key, because first of all, you enrich yourself by listening to what young people from a different generation have to say. They think outside of the box, and they came with great innovative approaches to problems that we didn't know how to solve.
Okay. So I'm going to pick up on that word innovation and bring in Jan. Jan, can you maybe just give us a 101 a little bit about Climeworks, and then specifically just pick up on that theme of innovation within an urban context and what work that you're doing with regards to that?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here. Well, first of all, for those of you who've not heard about Climeworks before, just in a one-sentence summary what we are doing. That's the nice thing that we can do it. So we are building technological plans that capture CO2 out of the air. So since 2009, so since 15 years, we were created as a spin-off from ETH Zurich here in Switzerland. Started with 2 people. In the meantime, are about 450 people, mostly here in Switzerland, in the US, and in Iceland, where our plants are. And we've been developing technology to extract CO2 from the air, and then partnering with other players who can safely store the CO2 underground. And we are working with our customers, which typically are corporates, but can also be individuals who have net zero or even negative agendas and targets, and are looking for ways to permanently and measurably remove CO2 from the atmosphere. And we are selling the capacity of our plants to those people. So what we would typically do is having a multi-year contract with a company who has a certain goal of getting rid of certain emissions they couldn't address otherwise. And over these years, like year by year, we'll extract a certain amount of CO2 from the air and store it underground from them. So it's been a lot of innovation that has happened. And in the urban context, I think it's important. The first thing is what we are building. Imagine that a little bit. If you don't have a picture of that, you can compare it to renewables technology, to solar panels or to windmills, for example. So it's a modular system, and you need to spread it out over quite a bit of area because you need to capture push all the air through to capture the CO2 out there. So we are typically not found directly in urban communities, so you would not want to have a plant directly in the city of Davos, if you like. But that's good, because the good thing is CO2 is everywhere. The atmosphere is very well mixed, so you can do this everywhere. So I can have emissions happening somewhere in Australia. That CO2 will be transported through the atmosphere. It's all mixed, so you have the CO2 basically everywhere. We can have a CO2 capture plant that is up in Iceland, and we can have a customer that is in Japan. So it doesn't matter. It's very, very global, so to say. However, that said, if we look at the direct implementations, there's a lot of interaction with cities, with communities. Just to name one example, the first plant that we've ever built in a commercial way was in Iceland, in the vicinity of the city of Reykjavik, and there was a lot of interaction. So we've learned from the Icelandic communities that there's a long history of introducing industry in Iceland. At some point, tourism became quite popular, and then the people didn't like industry so much anymore, because the tourism and industry was a bit against going with different goals, so to say. And what we then did is we looked at Icelandic architecture interacting with the people, and we tried to design our plant that it fits well into the landscape, fits well with the architecture. So if you see pictures of our plant, it's called the Orca plant, which is a bit outside of Reykjavik. You'll see there's some wood cladding and panels around it, so which looks, and the color schemes is really adapted into the landscape there. So that's one example. Another example is when taking CO2 out of the air, a big question is what about the energy supply? So how can we supply those plants with energy? It makes only sense if you take renewable energy. So developing renewable energy projects is a big topic, which goes hand in hand with developing direct air capture. And that in turn, there's a strong link to the need of communities, of cities. If we look at our Iceland example, again, we are very closely integrated into the heat supply of the city of Reykjavik. So there's a geothermal power plant that supplies the city with heat, with district heating. They have a lot of that, actually. If you've been in Iceland, you will see that in the winter they are even heating their sidewalks, so there is no ice other than here in Davos. And we managed to interact with the system in a way that we can take excess energy, like on very cold winter days when the city needs more energy, then we can kind of put down our energy demand and ramp it up again in the summer. So going forward, I mean that's a smaller example. Probably going forward, when we install more capacity, like this interaction will become more and more important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just again, I'm going to keep up with this theme of innovation, because I think that's where youth and urbanism are intersecting. And tell me, so we've heard something very specific there about the bespoke and very localized response in Iceland. Can you talk to me, within your experience, about how the existing, in a period of rapid change within an urban context, how can existing initiatives be adapted and accelerated to better support youth, especially in these processes of deep social change?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the panelists. I've been, as a young person, it's amazing to see how that we are sending this message that youth voices needs to be heard. I want to raise two important points here. That when it comes to urban challenges, we see the challenges from a very massive perspective. That we kind of like, when we see, for example, Ulaanbaatar City, we have massive problem of air pollution and traffic. But as a young people, we often tend to be very intimidated by all those problems and things that we can't actually solve it. But we are having a lived experience in the cities, so we know every time when we wake up and we mobile in the city, we know what kind of challenges we face in the city design, in the city planning. So it's really important to find solutions for the problems. It's really important to see where is this problem coming from, and not to be very intimidated by it. So it's about how can we see the challenges that the cities are facing from a very close perspective, different perspective, and instead of being intimidated by the challenges, we can think of from a perspective that what we can do to contribute to solving this problem. So I think that's like my passion and work I do. That's where it's coming from. And the another thing is we also have to believe as young people that our voice matters, to to bring new solutions and also to adapt the solutions in our cities. Because it can be very intimidating, even for me today, being in this panel discussion, or like just being in Davos, it can be very intimidating for young people. But it's also important for us to recognize that our perspective, our lived experience, and our perspective really matters to kind of like solve these challenges, especially in the city. We are dealing with very intersectional and complex problems in the city. It really depends on the context and different challenges and even the people who are living in. So when we talk about innovation challenges, we really need to think about who are the beneficiaries, are how it can impact on the ground, on the people and the communities.
Nice. So Mauricio's approach of listening and giving space to youth, is this your experience within your city, where the municipal authorities, are they receptive to your voice?
There can be experiences like that, especially when I'm in the full, when I have a seat in the table, or when I'm in the room, I'm usually the youngest one, as you can see from here as well. So it can be very intimidating sometimes that I don't really express myself fully, especially when in Mongolia it's a very close and tight-knit community, and we only have as I mentioned, 3 million people, so it's a very small country in terms of population, but we're very rich in culture, landscape, and everything. So there's so many incidents and times that I felt belittled by a lot of people, but that's not the point. It's the point about how we are not get intimidated by it and really believe in ourselves, that our voice and perspective matters.
Well, more power to you, say I. Mauricio, I want to just pick up taking that experience. So you enter into your mayoralty, and there are pre-existing structures, there's vested interests, there's old ways of doing things. How do you adapt, when you arrive into this role, how do you adapt these structures to better support youth for innovation and social change?
Well, actually, when I became mayor, I was the youngest mayor in the city's history. Yeah. So I think that I won the election with an important support from the young people. So I had, engaging the youth as a top priority in my agenda. And therefore, for me, having inputs, insights, and ideas from the youth was kind of a cross-cutting element of the decision-making process in the city, in many regards. So when we, evaluated the current, the existing projects back then, when we took office. We always try to engage the perspective from the youth in how to reshape those initiatives, how to improve them across the board. And really great ideas came up. And I can tell you a number of examples, right? From the
Give us one.
okay, so for example, the urban garden program. The city has a great urban garden program, but we took it to the next level, right? And that was I remember quite clearly a great brainstorming session with the youth, telling us what the perspective about that program was, how to improve it, how to make it more impactful, how to make it an opportunity for the youth to provide their insights and their support. And at the end, it was an internationally highly recognized program. It was very successful because it managed to address several SDGs simultaneously. So, addressing poverty because it was a source of income for many poor families in the city, to tackle climate change, to build resilience, to address food security issues, to address gender issues, because the majority of people working on those, owning those urban gardens were women and young women. So, it was great because, and all of that came from ideas provided by the youth. And again, there are some other examples about that, but I think that for me, what's fundamental is the conviction of how important is to listen to the youth.
Well, I think I was going to say the suggestion is for you to move to his city, but actually, I think you should make Mauricio the mayor of Misk City, and we all move there, and Jan can take care of the climate, the carbon extraction. So David, with that in mind, we've perfected our city. Working with Mohammed bin Salman City now, how do you align it and amplify youth voice within it? Because I'm particularly interested because having been to Saudi most recently, I felt like Gandalf. I felt like I was the oldest person there. Saudi feels like an incredibly young and vibrant place. So how are you specifying that within the city just now?
I think, in a way, I think what His Royal Highness is, it's a bit of a, for him, I think it's a bit of a social experiment because it's a city within a city, essentially. So, when you look at the employees of all the foundation businesses that are going to move there, you essentially got Saudi, male and female, single and young marrieds who are going to move from an existing part of Riyadh or from Jeddah or Eastern Province to a city which they're going to work in, and that's the ultimate goal for His Royal Highness. So, in a way, you have to immerse them in everything you do because they're going to be both employees and residents. And we did a town hall the other day. It was interesting, and what Ray said before about understanding. We did a briefing on what a smart city is, and I could see it just going over the heads of most of the staff. So I said to the guys I said, you need to have an education program because these people are going to live in a smart city, and they're going to use this all the time. So they need to understand why we're doing a smart city. The other thing is we've allowed the youth to develop a companion app. So we have a city app which has just become live, and the number of complaints and what about this, what about that, is fantastic because they're the ultimate user of this technology to help them live. So they're two examples where you get them involved, make sure they have an understanding of what His Royal Highness' vision is for this city, because he's really inviting you, if you stay with the foundation and any of the subsidiaries, and I think because we're not open yet, we've only opened the school, so most people are coming to work in my company in the city because we're on the edge of it, but everyone else in the foundation, apart from the teachers of the school, are elsewhere in Riyadh. So they're all going to turn up in third quarter 2025 to this new city, which will be their home for employment and for many to live there. So very important that in the next 18 months we understand what they want as users of the city, because they're coming from an existing part of the city where you don't have this opportunity to experiment what this is all about. innovation precinct and all the new economy jobs that most of them want to be in. And you've got to understand, I mean, 70% are young, and when you do the focus groups we've done, 2 out of 3 want to be an SME. They want to leave the government, safety of the government or whatever else, but they're very entrepreneurial, and this is what this is about. 5 years ago, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur in Saudi, you went to Dubai. It was easy to set up a business. Now you see what's happening in the kingdom about innovation, and this is what His Royal Highness wants to do. This is the platform to do it. So we've got a lot more to do with the youth in the next 18 months in every facet of the city. City management, we have to manage it in perpetuity for His Royal Highness. Bring companies in who want educated employees who have an innovation entrepreneurial mindset.
So it's more than just a planning development. It's this real trigger for societal shift. Right?
Significant. Yeah. Significant. And it changes your thinking of what our higher education offering should be. Yeah. Right? So, that's another strategy we're going through now.
So yeah, does any of that resonate with you? I'm thinking especially of this idea of getting people to adopt new technologies, to where you might have to bring along, willing constituents or unwilling constituents, especially within an urban or local context. What's your messaging there? What's your approach to working with communities, and especially with youth communities?
Yeah, and look, generally working with new technologies is probably something that the youth is in general very open to. That's one thing, but looking at it a bit more broadly, what we are offering at Climeworks, there's one very important finding. So we are developing and deploying technology to take CO2 out of the air to help mitigate climate change. If we think of that a bit in numbers, climate science tells us by mid of the century we need to remove gigatons of CO2 out of the air to get to net zero and to eventually meet the targets of the Paris Agreement. And that means what we are doing is it feels like we are extremely fast, we are extremely dynamic, developing, and so on, but if we think of the impact on climate, it's a long-term solution, right? It's not something like we cannot put up hundreds of plans tomorrow and the day after tomorrow we've saved climate change. So we are talking about a 20, 30, 40, even 50-year time horizon, and that inherently is something that the youth can engage with a lot. When I speak with young people, what I typically hear, like many people, and this has been widely discussed over the past years, many people are really, really concerned about the future, concerned about what happens in 20, 30 years. What will the impact of climate change on myself be? And those are typically young people, because they think, well, probably the next 10 years will be fine. The next 20 years we might be fine too. But what I want to live another 60 years maybe, or even more. What is in 50 years or 60 years down the road? And what I hear from young people thinking about this, people often say, hey, there's so much debate about climate change. There's a COP conference every year, and there's a lot talking about the problem, about current problems, about what our industry is doing, but there's relatively little talking about what are long-term solutions. What gives us actually hope? What can we do in the long term? And that is really something that we are offering. So we are not doing something that solves everything tomorrow, but we are offering a solution that can scale to a level of a new industry that can mitigate this problem in 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and this can give us jobs. Also, this can create opportunities. I spoke about renewable energy before. There are a lot of synergies, so we can develop those type of plans in the future together with renewable energy, ideally in the global south. In particular, there's a lot of opportunity for energy harvesting. We've just announced a project development activity in Kenya, for example. That is one good example. So we can do all these things, and we can have good synergies with other things that are good for the climate, that will create jobs, that will create prosperity, and that's what resonates a lot with people, and that's how we have set up our business. Our communication really goes a lot along the lines: what can we do? What is it that's actionable? What can I be doing going forward, and not just talking about problems? And to just give another example, at some point when we started Climeworks, we actually had different business models in mind. We were thinking, yeah, we have made this great invention to take CO2 out of the air. Maybe we can sell the CO2 to make something out of it, make new materials or something. And at some point, we then came up with combining what we are doing with the underground storage of CO2. And because so many people asked us about that, they said, hey, taking CO2 out of the air, that's great. Everyone says that's a problem, let's just put it away. Then we did that, we built the first plant, and then people said, that is so great, good technology, how can I be part of that? And then we made something very simple. That was back in 2019, we created a web shop. And everyone could go. That's still active. We're still doing this. If you go to climeworks.com, you can have a subscription and have us remove a certain amount of CO2 for you every month from the air. And interestingly, if we look at our customers, our clients there's a lot of young people who are doing this, because many people said, hey, I want to do something. I want to be part of this, but I can't invest a fortune, but you can just do it for $1 a month if you like. So, but then you've done something, you support this new technology. So for me, as a conclusion, it is inherently something, what we are developing, it is something with a 20, 30, 40-year time horizon. So that's what we're developing towards. So it's inherently something that is of biggest interest to the young people, and that's how we try to interact and engage with them.
So I think that's good. I mean, in summary, what I would say is, what your work does, and indeed what all our panelists' work do, is it gives agency to young people. Okay, it gives people solutions. I think if the future were a business, the young youth of the world would be the biggest shareholders, and they see their future being mortgaged away by an older generation. So actually, giving young people agency, giving them a sense of something that they can do, which is constructive and energetic and ambitious, is something I think inherent in all this work. So thank you all. Mona, we've got a few minutes. Yeah. Well, okay, so in the spirit of the Majlis, I'd like to open up the discussion, maybe for one or two quick questions. Anyone? This fellow here?
Yeah, I was wondering, for Mr. David Henry, how is sustainability integrated into Mystic City?
So I'll just say that quickly. So how is sustainability integrated into Mystic City?
So we have developed the whole master plan based on the LEED certification from the US Green Building Council. So it's called LEED Gold Cities and Communities. So you have a whole rating system. And to get to gold, you've got to have so many points. So it's everything to do with urban planning, water management, solar. So we've done that, and so much of your buildings have to be also have a rating. So that's one area. The other thing we decided to do is have a private utility network. So apart from electricity, so everything else in the city we own, we fund, and that way we manage the sustainable usage of particularly potable water, which is a huge issue in Saudi. So that's how we do it essentially, and we're managing the city. So Freeze Royal Highness. So sustainability from a planning point of view, use of water, electricity, district cooling, all those sorts of things. That's how we do it.
Thank you. Okay, so I think Mona's given me a very nice but firm death stare. So we're going to close off proceedings at this stage. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Maurizio, David, and Tamerlan. And yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.